Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today, let's ice dye a pair of harem pants. I bought these pants online from Old Navy and they're 55% linen and 45% viscose rayon. So both of those fabrics should dye up really nicely. I'm excited to see how they turn out. They have a smocked waistband and then they have a cinch cord down at the bottom to cinch the bottom of the pants in tighter. So I went ahead and opened up the cinch cord and spread out the pants as wide as they would go down at the bottom. Then I'm going to lay them out with the legs of the pants right up next to each other. I decided I was going to use some sinew and tie some diagonal lines in the pants. So I don't want to tie each pant leg individually. I kind of want the diagonal lines to almost flow from one pant leg to the next. So I'm going to grab an area on the pair of pants, just kind of start to push that with my hand. And as I go, I'm going diagonally, and then I'm going to use some sinew to tie a diagonal line right there. I'm using sinew because sinew is wax coated. So the wax coating on the piece of sinew, as I wrap that sinew around on top of itself, when I begin to pull, it will tighten down on itself and it will grip. And when it does that, I keep pulling until I can't pull anymore. What that does is that forms pretty much like a waterproof line there, or a liquid-proof line, where the dye can't get under that area, and that area is going to be a defined line. I'm going to continue lines on either side of this initial line. And you can do as many lines or as few as you want to. That is totally up to you. You can make them more uniform in distance. You can make them random in distance. I'm not really measuring mine. I'm just kind of making mine more of a free-form design. I know since I've spread out the pants with the bottoms of them being wide, it's going to look different, or they're probably going to look a little bit different when I cinch the bottoms or the hems of the pants down. Once I was finished tying the pants, I placed them aside because I was tying a few other projects that same day. So by the time I came back to apply the dye to this pair of pants, they were fully dry. They don't have to be though. You can apply the dye to this design or something like this when it's still damp. My vision for this pair of pants was blue and peach kind of mixed together in more of a watercolor look. So for my setup, I have a plastic tote, and then I have a metal colander that has expandable arms, so you can make it stretch across the plastic tote. I'm going to place the pair of pants down inside of the metal colander, and in order to do that, I'm kind of twisting them like you would a cinnamon roll, and then I'm going to place the colander over the top of the plastic tote. As I mentioned earlier, I want this pair of pants to have more of a watercolor feel. So I've placed them inside of the metal colander because I want the runoff from the melting ice that's mixed with the dye, which is also called muck, to go ahead and flow through the pants. I don't want the pants to sit in that muck. I want them to be a little lighter in color and not quite as dark from the effect of the muck. I also want to see if I can get quite a few color splits out of the colors I've chosen. So I am going to apply the dye over the top of the ice, which is called DOI. If you ever see abbreviations for tie-dye, that's what that means. I normally get more color splits if I apply the dye over the top of the ice, and it also gives more of a watercolor feel, which is what I'm going for. So I've placed a generous layer of ice over the top of the pants, and then I'm going to apply the dye in stripes. And I'm going to alternate between blues and peach colors. I've chosen 4 blue colors and 3 peach colors, so I'm going to start with blue and end with blue. I'm going to kind of jump around with the way I apply the dye so that I have it spaced out the way I want to. But the blues in order going from left to right are smoky blue from Dye Spin, blue Kachu from Dharma Trading Company, Wedgwood blue from Dharma, and blue gray. The blue Kachu is a special, I think it was a muck dye color or some kind of special color. I don't think you can probably still get that one. You can either leave that out or just substitute it for another blue that you have. Most of the blues that I've chosen are kind of grayish blues. And if you'll notice, blue-gray is the one that's at the very end on the right. And it doesn't go on blue. It went on peach. I double-checked this color several times because I thought, oh, wow, I haven't used this one for a while, and I don't remember it being this color. But watch, and I'll show you. It really is blue. Then the peach colors I'm going to use, going from left to right on the shirt, are Coral from Pro Chemical and Dye, then Himalayan Salt and Fire on the Mountain, which are both Dharma Trading Company muck dye colors. Again, these probably aren't still available, but you can just find some other really pretty peachy type tones that you have. I'm being a little bit daring with this pair of pants because in general, anything in the orange family, like peach, and blue don't usually play nice together. Sometimes they mix and they form brown. So I'm hoping for the best with this pair of pants. Once I have the dye on, I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash over the top and then place this container aside and allow the ice to melt. As you can see, as the ice starts to melt on that right-hand side, that peachy color will eventually turn to blue. Sometimes the color that the dye is when it goes on is not actually the color the dye is once it hits the water and it starts to melt. So after the ice melted, I still had quite a bit of white left on the pants, so I went ahead and turned them over. So because I have the design striped with colors, I have to turn them over where the colors are on the same exact areas. So I'm going to grab the pair of pants and I'm going to hold the design together and flip them from bottom to top. If I tried to flip the design from left to right or right to left, I would have to reverse the colors when I apply them on this pair of pants. I don't want to have to do that. I want to stick with what I did the last time. So I turned them bottom to top, added some more ice on top, and then I striped with the same colors as best I could. I mean, you're not ever going to get them exactly lined up perfectly, but hopefully I got them close. This is where I'm a little bit concerned about mixing my blue and my peach because, like I said, I'm not going to be able to get the color striped exactly the same way each time. So again, I'm hoping for the best with this pair of pants. After applying the dye, I added a little bit more dry soda ash, then placed the container aside to allow the ice to melt. After this layer of ice melted, I left the pants for about 48 hours to allow time for the dye to bond with the fabric. Then to rinse the pants, I took them to my utility sink and I began rinsing them in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. I'm sorry that this part of the video is a little bit foggy. It was really hot that day and I didn't notice that my camera had fogged up coming from the air conditioning out into the hot, humid garage. After rinsing in cold for a while, I went ahead and warmed the water up to hot and continued rinsing in hot water to try to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Instead of rinsing for a long time, I decided to soak the pants. So I went ahead and untied them, ran some really hot water in my utility sink, added a little bit of Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, placed the pants inside, and allowed them to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I placed the pants along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent into my washing machine and I washed them using a hot water cycle. Okay, so the pants have been washed, dried, and ironed, and let's see what they look like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think these turned out really good. They're not exactly what I'd envisioned, but they're not bad. The only thing that's kind of throwing me is that really dark stretch of color right up toward the top part of the pants. I mean, I guess I'm glad that it's up there, not down at the very bottom. I don't know. I don't really know why that is so dark in that area. That seems a little bit odd to me. But overall, I mean, I do have some darker areas that look a little bit brown where the colors mix together, but it's not overwhelmingly brown. I don't know. They almost look more red burgundy-ish than they do peach. And I mean, once I knew I had to add a second layer of ice and a second layer of dye, all my expectations went out the window. I mean, I was figuring that they would be just a mess. And thankfully, they're not as bad as I was expecting them to be. They aren't as exciting as I was expecting them to be either, but I don't think that they're horrible. I knew I was being risky putting these two colors together. I could have played it a little bit safer and done like pinks and purples or blues mixed with pinks or purples, but no, I mean, I wanted to try something, so here we are. I don't think that they're terrible. I really don't. Like I said, that one dark swath of color is the only thing that's kind of throwing me. So as far as the colors go, I know the reason why my peaches are more of like a burgundy-ish color. And I think it has to do with the fabric content. So my color swatches are made using 100% cotton fabric, but there's really no cotton in these pants. They are linen or viscose rayon. And when you use the dyes on a different type of fabric like linen, or you use them on rayon, they can show up very differently. I normally just dye cotton items. Every now and then I'll dye something that's rayon or in this case linen, but for the most part I just do cotton items. However, when Dharma came out with their new ice dyes, I was in contact with them back and forth about the new colors, and they sent me a few examples of how the colors operated or how they looked very different on cotton versus rayon and some other fabrics. And I think that's what happened here. That's the reason why my colors don't look quite the same as they do on my color swatches on this pair of pants. I didn't even think about that when I was applying the dye. But as far as the pants go, like the Old Navy pants, I think they dyed up great. I think they took the color really well. They held up through the process really well. You know, I know people have had problems with rayon being super delicate, and so using sinew, sometimes they've had issues with damaging the fabric. I didn't have any of those problems. I mean, I was a little bit more gentle when I went ahead and tied the fabric, but I didn't have any issues. And I think the entire pair of pants, even that smocked waistband, dyed up really nicely. I was a little bit concerned about that area too. So overall, I really like the pair of pants. I mean, they aren't exactly what I'd envisioned, but I understand now why my colors turned out a little bit differently. This was a learning lesson for me too. I mean, I knew that information, but I didn't really keep that in the forefront of my mind when I went to dye this pair of pants. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it, and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.